talking with the very large cultivators in North America, this is a top priority of senior management to say, look, we have to automate this to give us a consistent product.
From MJBulls Media, it's the Raising Cannabis Capital Show. Hey, Joe. Thanks for being on the MJBulls podcast.
You bet, Dan. Nice to be here.
Today we're talking to Joe Ducey about his company, AutoCure, and its automatic curing units. Joe, let's start from the beginning and assume that our listeners have never been to a grow facility and they're not familiar with all the steps in the growing process. Can you give us just a 50,000-foot view of all the different phases?
Yeah, sure. So to go from a clone to ready to harvest is perhaps a 3-month process. Typically, the way it has been in the past is a cultivator will harvest and then they will hang dry for a period of time. And that hang dry process could be anywhere from 7 to 14 days. After that hang dry period has been completed, then they will move to a curing process. And typically in a commercial environment, that curing process is big 5-gallon buckets that they put the bud into.
Let me walk backwards just a bit. So they cut the plant, and then they have to dry it to get all the moisture out of it. So they hang dry it. Then they stick this into a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket, to cure it. Mm-hmm. And during that phase, they do something what's called burping. Explain that.
Okay. Yeah. So in the initial hang dry period, what the cultivator is doing is getting rid of the initial moisture in the plant. And once that process has been completed, anywhere from 7 to 14 days, depending upon the cultivator, the next process is the curing process. And what you're doing in the curing process is you're getting rid of that residual moisture that is in the bud. And what you're trying to do is gently draw out that moisture while retaining the terpenes and the THC that is in, and the CBDs as well, that is in the flower. The gold standard, for forever has been a glass mason jar. So what you're doing is you're putting that flower in this airtight container, the mason jar, and you're letting it sit in a dark environment for a period of time. And then you are taking it out of that dark environment and opening the jar and letting it breathe and bringing in a new atmosphere that has a lower relative humidity.
That's where they came up with the word burping.
Exactly.
I got it. So what can go wrong during this final phase?
Oh, you can wreck your entire crop.
So 3 months of growing, all the expense and everything involved with that, everything could go out the window by messing something up with the final phase, by introducing mold or all the other things that you've talked about. Could all go wrong in the final phase?
Absolutely, Dan.
Oh, so how does the AutoCure automate the final process?
So every AutoCure is an airtight chamber, just like a glass mason jar. And they are made of black medical grade acrylic because acrylic is the closest thing we could get to glass without being glass. And it's black, so no light gets in during the drying and curing process and degrades the THC. Once the wet flower has been loaded into the AutoCure chamber, the relative humidity begins to rise. When it hits that threshold, AutoCure burps or vents.
Okay.
And it does so with 2 sets of fans, one set that pushes air and one set that pulls air. And it uses a laminar airflow, which means it's moving bottom to top. In the course of 7.5 to 10 minutes, it completely pulls that moist atmosphere out of the chamber, leaving no microclimates or dead spots, and pulls in this new, drier atmosphere. So the flower that's sitting in the front left-hand corner of an AutoCure chamber is getting the exact same atmosphere as the flower that's sitting in the back right-hand corner.
Yeah, I think about it. In some of these large grows, there are hundreds and hundreds of these buckets. And what, do you have to assign somebody to walk by each one and burp it occasionally? Is that how it works?
Exactly. but AutoCure does that for you automatically.
Yeah.
AutoCure knows how much moisture is in the chamber at any given time and how often it's going to burp. So even if you're that person with 20 years of experience, you're not going to know exactly when you're supposed to burp or vent. You kind of do, but you don't know exactly. Only the flower knows exactly when it wants this new atmosphere.
For a director of cultivation at a giant grow, if they're home and they want to see what's going on at any of their grows, what kind of options does the AutoCure provide for them?
Yeah, great question, Dan. So I initially mentioned, or earlier I had mentioned how AutoCure logs each cure. That's part of something we call the AutoCure cloud. Another part of the AutoCure cloud is the ability for the cultivator to view what is going on inside their chamber graphically on their smartphone or their computer. So AutoCure will show them a 48-hour trend of what's going on inside their chamber. On the top, they'll see a graph of the temperature. But on the bottom, more importantly, they will see a graph of the relative humidity. So they will see that graph going up, and they'll see it hit that threshold that they have set, and then they'll see it vent and then fall down dramatically and continue that process.
So eventually all grows will move towards an automated process, would you think?
Absolutely, Dan. In fact, talking with the very large cultivators in North America, this is a top priority of senior management to say, look, we have to automate this to give us a consistent product.
Joe, a product like this is really interesting to investors, but it'd be especially interested to investors if there were some patents. Where are you in that process?
We have filed comprehensive patents covering everything with AutoCure, and we filed those over a year and a half ago. We have a very good patent attorney. He says we should be hearing within the next 60 days or so, and so we're very optimistic that most, if not all, of those patents will be granted.
Wow. Tell us a little bit more about your company, AutoCure. How old is it? How many different units do you have? How many units have you sold?
Okay. The initial concept for AutoCure started almost 5 years ago when my son Cole had the idea for it. He spent some time prototyping it, and then the software started being developed probably 4 years ago or so. And in that time frame, we have about 80 customers.
So you're obviously growing and you're scaling up. Where do you intend to take AutoCure in, say, the next 2 years?
Well, we're going to concentrate primarily on the commercial market at this time, the larger grows right now, because frankly, that's where the money is.
Yeah.
And they have a huge need for that, because once you're cultivating on a very large scale, like the large LPs in Canada or in the U.S., if you don't automate this process, there's no way you can keep up with that volume.
Yeah. You know, our listeners love cannabis ancillary products that don't touch the plant, especially especially the ones that are already in the field. To fuel your expansion, you need capital, I'm assuming. So what type of investment opportunities are you offering investors to be part of the AutoCure team?
Well, in not getting into details right now, of course, we're open to an equity investment with the right investor.
So if an investor is interested and they should contact you, would that be the best way to do it? Okay. And
I would be the best initial contact point.
Joe at AutoCure.us. That's your email address?
That's correct.
If you want to find out more information about AutoCure or their investment opportunities, you can go to the MJBulls website. We have everything on it on the MJBulls website. And of course, like I said, you can contact Joe Ducey directly at joe@autocure.com. Joe, super informative show. Probably the most informative show we've had so far. Thank you for sharing with us your story with us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Dan. Really enjoyed being with you.